I spent 20 years at my wife's dad company protecting $4 billion deals, only to be fired 48 hours before my $400,000 bonus check. You're done here. He smirked as he left. The next morning, he yelled into the phone. What the hell did you say to them? 20 years. 20 goddamn years of blood, sweat, and coffee stains that probably violated several health codes. And this is how it ends. With a termination notice slapped on my desk like it's a flyer for a car wash I didn't ask for. Not even a manila envelope with one of those "we regret to inform you" letters that HR probably keeps pre-printed in a drawer labeled soul-crushing necessities. Nope. Just a single sheet of paper, laser-printed on company letterhead, dropped on my keyboard while I was mid-sip of the world's worst break-room coffee. Effective immediately. HR will handle the rest, Logan Grayson Jr. announced, standing there in his $1,000 suit that probably cost more than my car's down payment. He had this smirk plastered across his face like he'd just cured cancer, invented time travel, and won the lottery all in the same afternoon. The kind of smirk that made you want to check if his face was stuck that way permanently, like your mom warned you about when you were a kid making ugly faces in the mirror. I blinked at him, then at the paper, then back at him. My brain was doing this weird thing where it was trying to process information but kept getting error messages, like a Windows 95 computer trying to run modern software. 20 years at Grayson Global. 2 decades of my life poured into this company that my father-in-law built from the ground up, back when handshake deals actually meant something, and people returned phone calls instead of hiding behind email autoresponders. Logan cleared his throat, waiting for me to respond. Probably expecting tears, or rage, or maybe for me to throw my stapler at his perfectly coiffed head. But here's the thing about getting screwed over by someone who thinks synergy is a personality trait. You don't give them the satisfaction. So I just sat there, coffee cup in hand, staring at this termination notice like it was a menu at a restaurant I couldn't afford. Do you understand what I just said? Logan asked, his voice dripping with that special kind of condescension reserved for people who inherited their job titles instead of earning them. Yeah, I said slowly, setting down my coffee. I understand that after 20 years of keeping this company from imploding like a house of cards in a wind tunnel, you're firing me. Effective immediately. Very efficient. Really captures that corporate efficiency we're always talking about in those mandatory team-building seminars nobody wants to attend. His smirk faltered for half a second. Just a flicker, but I caught it. Good. Let him wonder if I was being sarcastic or genuine. Spoiler alert. It was definitely sarcasm, but Logan wasn't exactly working with a full deck when it came to reading social cues. Behind him, I could see Karen from HR hovering in the doorway like a ghost who'd rather be literally anywhere else. Karen, bless her heart, looked like she was being held hostage by corporate protocol and would rather be home binge-watching whatever soap opera was popular with middle-aged women who'd given up on their dreams around the same time shoulder pads went out of style. She was clutching a folder that probably contained my exit paperwork, her eyes darting between Logan and me like she was watching a tennis match in slow motion. And then there was Sam, the summer intern, standing just behind Karen with his Starbucks cup gripped in both hands like it was the Holy Grail. The kid's eyes were the size of dinner plates, and I could practically see him thinking, this is way better than anything on Netflix. He was getting a front row seat to corporate drama, and judging by the way he was trying not to smile, he was eating it up like it was free pizza in the break room. Well, I said, pushing back from my desk and standing up. I guess that's that then. 20 years. Down the drain. Poof. Gone. Like my will to live every time I had to sit through one of your PowerPoint presentations about pivoting to blockchain solutions when you can barely figure out how to unmute yourself on Zoom calls. Logan's face turned an interesting shade of red. The kind of red that suggested his blood pressure was doing things that would make a cardiologist very nervous and very rich. This is a business decision, Daniel. Nothing personal. Right? Nothing personal. I grabbed my coffee mug, the one that said "World's Okayest Employee" that Maya got me as a joke 3 Christmases ago, and picked up my termination notice. Just to clarify, you're firing me today. As in, right now. This exact moment in time. That's what effective immediately means, yes, Logan said, crossing his arms like he was trying to look authoritative, but mostly just looked like a toddler refusing to eat his vegetables. I nodded slowly, doing some quick mental math. Today was Tuesday. My bonus, that beautiful, glorious $400,000 bonus that I'd been counting on to finally replace the water heater that had been making noises like a dying whale, was set to vest on Thursday, 48 hours from now, 2 days. And buried in that bonus clause, tucked away in Section 14 of my contract that I'd memorized like it was the lyrics to my favorite song, was a little legal landmine that Victor Grayson Sr. had planted years ago. The compliance suite, the crown jewel, the golden goose, the thing that kept $4 billion worth of contracts from spontaneously combusting like a chemistry experiment gone wrong. If my bonus vested, I got controlling rights to it. Not just access, not just usage, control, ownership, the whole enchilada. And Logan just fired me 2 days early. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I wanted to send Logan a fruit basket with a card that said, "Congratulations on being the dumbest person in the building." And that's including the guy in accounting who microwaves fish every single day. But instead, I just smiled. A calm, collected smile that probably made me look like a serial killer in a corporate setting, but whatever. Understood. I'll pack up my desk. Logan looked almost disappointed that I wasn't making a scene. Karen will escort you out. Standard protocol. Of course. Standard protocol. Can't have the fired employee wandering around, causing trouble, stealing office supplies, or, I don't know, explaining to people how badly you just screwed up. Excuse me. Logan stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height advantage. Didn't work. I dealt with angry German bankers at 3 a.m. who made Logan look like an angry chihuahua. Nothing, I said cheerfully. Just thinking out loud. You know me, always got my head in the clouds, daydreaming about things like severance packages and contractual obligations, and the legal definition of effective immediately versus after the completion of current bonus cycles. Logan's eyes narrowed. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, his two brain cells were trying to communicate with each other and figure out why I was so calm. But then Sam's phone buzzed, breaking the tension, and Logan turned away like he'd already forgotten I existed. Karen, process him out. I have a meeting with Cormont Capital in an hour. Ah yes, Cormont Capital. The partner company in that $4 billion deal that was held together by duct tape, prayers, and, oh yeah, my compliance suite. The thing I was about to own in 48 hours. The thing Logan thought he was protecting by firing me early and saving a $400,000 bonus payout. What Logan didn't realize, and this was the beautiful, karmic, absolutely poetic part, was that he'd just fired his parachute while jumping out of an airplane. He thought he was being clever, trimming the fat, making a business decision. Really, he'd just signed away his family's fortune with the same casual confidence of a guy who thinks he can't get a speeding ticket because his dad knows the mayor. Karen shuffled forward, holding out the exit paperwork like she was handing me a subpoena. Daniel, if you could just sign here, and initial here. I signed everything. Didn't even read it. Why bother? In 48 hours, none of this would matter. In 48 hours, Logan Grayson Jr. was going to learn a very expensive lesson about reading contracts before firing the one person who actually knew how to keep his company afloat. As I packed up my desk, 20 years condensed into one cardboard box that Karen provided, because of course she came prepared, I caught Sam staring at me. The kid looked confused, like he couldn't figure out why I wasn't crying or throwing things or updating my LinkedIn profile to unemployed and bitter. Hey Sam, I said, tossing my stapler into the box. Piece of advice for your career. Always read the fine print. Always. Because sometimes the fine print is the difference between getting screwed and getting everything you ever wanted. Sam nodded, even though I could tell he had no idea what I was talking about. That was fine. He'd figure it out eventually, probably around the same time Logan did. I took one last look at my office. 20 years. And all I got was a termination notice and a cardboard box. Well, that and the smug satisfaction of knowing that in exactly 48 hours, Logan's world was going to explode like a poorly designed firework. As Karen escorted me out, because apparently I needed a chaperone to walk to the elevator like I was a flight risk or something, I passed by Logan's office. He was already on the phone, probably calling Cormont to assure them everything was fine, that firing me was part of the restructuring plan. I smiled to myself, clutching my box of office supplies and my world's okayest employee mug. There goes my dream of finally buying socks without holes, I thought. But hey, at least I'd have the last laugh. And in 48 hours, that laugh was going to be worth $4 billion. Sitting in my car in the Grayson Global parking lot with my cardboard box of shame-riding shotgun, I couldn't help but think back to my first day at this godforsaken place. It was 20 years ago, almost to the day, and I'd walked through those glass doors with the kind of optimism reserved for lottery ticket buyers and people who actually believe their New Year's resolutions are going to stick this time. Back then, Grayson Global still had motivational posters on the walls. You know the kind. Eagles soaring over mountains with captions like perseverance and synergy, and my personal favorite, there's no I in team, but there's definitely an I in win. Yeah, that last one never made sense to me either, but Victor Grayson Sr. loved it, so it stayed up there like a testament to corporate confusion. The office had this smell back then, new carpet mixed with ambition and the faint aroma of burnt rubber masquerading as coffee. That coffee machine was a relic even in 2005, the kind that looked like it had survived the Cold War and possibly contributed to ending it by making Soviet spies wish they'd never infiltrated corporate America. But we drank it anyway, because free is free, and when you're 28 years old making entry-level salary, you'll drink pretty much anything that contains caffeine and won't immediately kill you. Victor Grayson Sr. himself had interviewed me, not some HR drone or middle manager trying to justify their existence. The actual CEO of the company sat across from me in his corner office and asked me questions that had nothing to do with my resume and everything to do with whether I was the kind of person who'd still be around when things got ugly. "Son," he'd said, leaning back in his leather chair that probably cost more than my entire college education, "I don't need someone who's going to jump ship the second Google comes calling with a ping-pong table and free lunch. I need someone who understands that building something real takes time, takes sacrifice, and takes showing up even when you'd rather be literally anywhere else." I nodded, trying to look wise beyond my years while internally panicking that I might sneeze or say something stupid and blow my chance at a real salary with benefits and everything. "This company's your family now," Victor had continued, and at the time, I'd thought that was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said to me. Family, belonging, purpose. All the things my actual family back in Ohio never quite managed to provide between my dad's drinking and my mom's overtime shifts at the diner. Turns out Victor meant the kind of family that steals your fries when you're not looking and kicks you out of the car in the middle of nowhere because you dared to ask for gas money. But I didn't know that on day one. On day one, I was just grateful to have a desk, a computer that didn't freeze every 10 minutes, and business cards with my name printed on them like I was a real adult person doing real adult things. Those first few years were brutal in the way that builds character or destroys it, depending on whether you're the type to rise to challenges or crumble like a Nature Valley granola bar. I pulled all-nighters that would have made medical residents weep with sympathy. I fixed crises that erupted at 2 a.m. because some client in Singapore clicked on a phishing email and compromised their entire network. I kept billion-dollar clients from jumping ship when competitors came sniffing around with better offers and prettier PowerPoints. There was this one time, God, I'll never forget this, when our German banking client, Steinberg Financial, threatened to pull their entire portfolio because of a compliance issue that would have made a lawyer cry. Some rookie in our Berlin office had screwed up the paperwork so badly that it violated about 15 different EU regulations, and Herr Dietrich Steinberg himself was on the phone at 6 a.m. my time, screaming in a mixture of German and English that roughly translated to "You incompetent American cowboys are going to bankrupt me." I'd stumbled out of bed, still in my boxers, laptop balanced on my knees, trying to remember the German phrases Maya had taught me during our honeymoon in Munich. "Herr Steinberg," I'd said, my voice still scratchy from sleep. "Geben Sie mir 2 Stunden. Give me 2 hours." And I'd fixed it. Before his bratwurst breakfast was even cold, I'd patched the compliance holes, resubmitted the documentation, and personally called every EU regulatory office that needed to sign off on the corrections. Steinberg had been so impressed he'd sent Victor a case of authentic German beer and a note that said, "This Daniel Morgan. You keep him, Ja?" Victor had given me a bonus that year. Not a huge one, but enough to finally take Maya on that honeymoon extension she'd been hinting about. We'd gone to the Bahamas for 4 days, and I'd spent 3 of them on my laptop dealing with another crisis because apparently the company couldn't survive 4 consecutive days without me. Maya had just rolled her eyes and ordered another pina colada. At least you're good at it, she'd said, which was her way of being supportive while also being completely exhausted by my inability to disconnect from work. That was the thing about working for Grayson Global. It consumed you. Slowly at first, like a really polite parasite, and then all at once until you couldn't remember what you used to do with your evenings before emergency client calls became a regular part of your vocabulary. I said, "Yes, sir," so many times in those 20 years that I started hearing it in my sleep. "Yes, sir, I can stay late. Yes, sir, I can handle the Tokyo presentation even though it's 3 a.m. and I haven't slept in 36 hours. Yes, sir, I'll postpone my daughter's birthday party because the Cormont Capital deal needs immediate attention." Actually, scratch that. Maya and I never had kids. Probably because between my work schedule and her graduate program, and then her own career trajectory, we kept pushing it to next year, until next year turned into next decade, and suddenly we were 48 years old having conversations about whether we even wanted kids anymore, or if we'd just convince ourselves we did, because that's what people were supposed to want. But I digress. The point is, I gave Grayson Global everything. My 20s, my 30s, and a good chunk of my 40s. I gave them weekends and holidays and anniversaries that Maya stopped bothering to celebrate, because she knew I'd be on my phone anyway, putting out whatever fire Logan or one of his predecessors had accidentally started by clicking something they shouldn't have. I was the guy who negotiated with angry clients before they'd had their morning coffee. I was the guy who explained to Victor why we couldn't just blockchain everything, when that became the buzzword du jour. I was the guy who trained every new hire, including Logan himself when he'd waltzed into the company fresh out of business school with his MBA and his startling lack of actual knowledge about how anything worked. Just think of it like Uber, but for enterprise solutions, Logan had said during his first strategy meeting, and I'd had to physically bite my tongue to keep from explaining that Uber for enterprise solutions meant absolutely nothing and was just word salad designed to make him sound innovative. But I'd nodded. I'd smiled. I'd said, "Interesting approach, Logan. Let's workshop that." Because that's what you did when the boss's son was clearly being groomed to take over despite having the business acumen of a goldfish with short-term memory problems. And how did they thank me? How did Victor Grayson Sr., the man who'd called me family, who'd trusted me with the company's most valuable assets, who'd literally written a clause into my contract to protect me, how did his legacy repay 20 years of loyalty? By tossing me out like an expired yogurt that someone found in the back of the office fridge. The kind of yogurt that's been there so long nobody remembers who bought it or why it seemed like a good idea at the time, and now it's just taking up space and needs to go. I laughed, sitting there in my car, because what else could I do? Crying seemed too dramatic, and screaming would have just scared the guy walking past my car on his way to his own soul-crushing job inside those glass doors. My phone buzzed. "Maya. Hey babe, just checking in. How's your day going?" I looked at the cardboard box. At the building where I'd spent 2 decades of my life. At the termination notice sitting on top of my world's okayest employee mug. "Interesting," I texted back. "Tell you about it when I get home." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Oh, that kind of interesting. The kind where you might want to open that bottle of wine we've been saving. The expensive one from our anniversary. That's the one. Jesus. Okay. Driving home now. Love you. Love you too." I set my phone down and started the car. The engine turned over with a sound that suggested it was just as tired as I was, and maybe we both deserved a break from pretending everything was fine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror at Grayson Global's headquarters. The building looked the same as it always had, steel and glass and corporate ambition reflecting the afternoon sun like a beacon of capitalism. But in 46 hours and counting, it was going to look very different. In 46 hours, that building was going to be the physical manifestation of Logan Grayson Jr.'s catastrophic mistake. And I was going to be sitting at home, drinking expensive wine, watching it all burn down like a marshmallow I'd deliberately held too close to the campfire. 20 years of loyalty, 20 years of bad coffee and worse decisions, and sacrificing everything for a company that couldn't even give me a proper goodbye. Well, karma was about to serve them their own cup of burnt rubber coffee. And this time, they were going to have to drink every last drop. Let me tell you about Logan Grayson Jr., the crown prince of mediocrity wrapped in an expensive suit and sprinkled with unearned confidence like it was some kind of designer cologne. If nepotism had a face, it would look exactly like Logan. Chiseled jawline courtesy of good genes, perfect teeth courtesy of expensive orthodontia, and absolutely zero self-awareness courtesy of never being told no in his entire privileged life. Logan strutted around the Grayson Global office like he was Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett all rolled into one tech-savvy, business genius package. Except Steve Jobs actually built things. Elon Musk at least knew how rockets worked, and Warren Buffett could probably explain what a balance sheet was without using the word synergy 17 times in one sentence. Logan, on the other hand, had never built a spreadsheet in his life that didn't have at least 3 formula errors and a color scheme that made your eyes bleed. But that didn't stop him from thinking he could run billion-dollar deals by sprinkling buzzwords into every meeting like fairy dust that would magically make everyone forget he had no idea what he was talking about. Synergy. That was his favorite. If I had $1 for every time Logan used the word synergy in a context where it made absolutely no sense, I could have retired 5 years ago and bought a small island somewhere tropical where the internet doesn't reach and nobody knows what blockchain is. We need to synergize our vertical integration with the blockchain infrastructure to create a paradigm shift in our customer engagement metrics, Logan had said once during a meeting with a client who manufactured industrial HVAC systems. The client, a 60-year-old engineer from Pittsburgh named Frank who wore the same polo shirt to every meeting, had just stared at Logan like he'd started speaking in tongues. "Son," Frank had finally said, his Pittsburgh accent thick as molasses, "we make air conditioners. Big ones. For factories. I don't know what any of those words mean, and I'm pretty sure you don't either." I'd had to fake a coughing fit to hide my laugh. Logan had turned red, stammered something about leveraging our core competencies, and then I'd had to step in and actually explain our proposal in terms that didn't sound like a random word generator having a seizure. But that was Logan in a nutshell. All flash, no substance, and absolutely convinced that his MBA from whatever overpriced business school daddy paid for made him qualified to reinvent industries he didn't understand. There was this one pitch meeting. God, this still keeps me up at night, where Logan tried to sell biometric redundancy to a mid-sized insurance company whose IT department consisted of 3 guys named Dave who barely knew how to reset their own passwords. Their senior Dave 1 as we called him, had asked what biometric redundancy meant. Logan had launched into this 10-minute explanation involving retinal scanners, fingerprint databases, and something about DNA-level authentication protocols that I'm 90% sure he'd just watched in a sci-fi movie the night before. He used terms like multi-factor quantum encryption and neural pattern recognition systems, with the confidence of someone who absolutely did not know what any of those words meant individually, let alone strung together in sentences. Dave 1 had looked at Dave 2. Dave 2 had looked at Dave 3. Dave 3 had looked at me like I was the adult in the room who could explain what the hell was happening. "What Logan means," I'd interjected, giving Logan a smile that hopefully read as supportive but definitely felt like I was dying inside, "is that we can implement a simple 2-factor authentication system using fingerprint scanners for your high-level access points. Nothing crazy, nothing quantum, just solid, reliable security that your team can actually use without needing a PhD in theoretical physics." The Daves had nodded, relieved. Logan had looked annoyed that I'd simplified his vision, but he'd signed off on it anyway, because even he knew that sometimes you had to dumb things down for the non-visionaries. Spoiler alert, the Daves weren't the non-visionaries in that room. And then there was the firewall incident. Oh man, the firewall incident was the stuff of legend, whispered about in break rooms and happy hours by employees who'd been there long enough to witness it firsthand. Logan had been giving a presentation to the board about our cybersecurity infrastructure. He'd made these elaborate slides, probably paid some designer a fortune to make them look sleek and modern, and he was clicking through them with the enthusiasm of someone who thought he was about to revolutionize the entire concept of network security. "And this," Logan had said, pointing to a slide that showed a literal wall of fire, complete with flames and dramatic lighting, "is our firewall. It creates an impenetrable barrier between our internal systems and external threats." Victor Grayson Sr. had squinted at the slide. "Logan, why is it on fire?" "Because it's a firewall, Dad. It's like a wall of fire that stops hackers. The room had gone silent. The kind of silent where you could hear the air conditioning humming and someone's stomach growling, and the slow, painful death of everyone's faith in nepotism as a viable hiring strategy. Chloe Dunn, the VP of operations and possibly the only person in the company with more patience than me, had cleared her throat. Logan, a firewall isn't actually on fire. It's a digital security system that monitors and controls incoming and outgoing network traffic. Logan had blinked. Right. Obviously. I was speaking metaphorically. Were you? Chloe had asked, and I could hear the barely suppressed laughter in her voice. Yes, metaphorically, to make it more accessible for people who don't understand the technical aspects. Victor had just sighed and asked me to take over the presentation. Logan had sat down, still convinced he'd been making a brilliant point that was simply too advanced for the room. Later, in the break room, Chloe had poured herself a coffee that looked strong enough to strip paint and muttered, "I'm counting the days until that kid trips over his own tie and faceplants into reality." "Get in line," I'd said. "I've got a spreadsheet tracking his greatest hits. The firewall thing just made the top 5. What's number 1? The time he confused a DDoS attack with a DOS prompt and told the client we'd just turn off the DOS to fix their security breach." Chloe had laughed so hard she'd snorted coffee out her nose. "Jesus, how is this company still standing?" "Because I fix everything he breaks," I'd said, and at the time, it was a joke. Turns out, it was also the literal truth. But Logan was untouchable. He was the heir apparent, the golden boy, the future of Grayson Global whether the company liked it or not. Every mistake he made got smoothed over, explained away, or blamed on someone else. Every bad decision got reframed as thinking outside the box, or pushing boundaries, or my personal favorite, disrupting the traditional paradigm. And the most frustrating part? Logan genuinely believed he was brilliant. He'd walk into meetings with Cormont Capital, our biggest partner, the $4 billion deal that kept the lights on and the paychecks flowing. And he'd start throwing around terms he'd clearly just learned from a TED Talk he'd watched that morning. "We need to leverage our blockchain synergies to create a decentralized ecosystem of vertical integration," Logan had announced during one particularly painful meeting with Cormont's legal team. The lawyers had just stared at him. One of them, a woman named Elise Harrington, who could make grown men cry with her cross-examination skills, had smiled the way a shark smiles right before it bites. "Mr. Grayson, this is a compliance contract for risk management services. There's no blockchain involved. There's no decentralization. There's just legally binding terms that your company either meets or doesn't." Logan had stammered something about future-proofing and innovation, and I'd had to jump in and actually discuss the terms like a functioning adult. After the meeting, one of Cormont's junior lawyers had pulled me aside. "Is he always like that?" "Define always," I'd said. "Like a tech bro who learned business words from a random generator and thinks confidence equals competence." "Then yes, always." The lawyer had whistled low. "Man, I don't know how you do it. I'd have quit years ago." I'd shrugged. "The pay's good, and someone has to keep this ship from sinking." That lawyer had given me a look that, in retrospect, was probably pity mixed with admiration. "You're either the most patient person alive or a masochist. Can it be both?" But here's the thing about Logan. He wasn't just incompetent. He was dangerously incompetent. The kind of incompetent where his mistakes didn't just cost the company money or reputation. They cost real people real jobs. He'd fire entire departments because he read some article about lean management without understanding what any of those departments actually did. He'd cancel projects midstream because they didn't align with whatever new obsession he'd picked up from a podcast. And now he'd fired me. 2 days before my bonus vested. 2 days before the clause kicked in. 2 days before he accidentally handed me the keys to his entire kingdom. Sitting in my car, thinking about all of Logan's greatest misses, I couldn't help but smile. Because this time, this one beautiful, poetic, karmic time, Logan's incompetence wasn't going to be my problem to fix. This time, Logan was going to have to clean up his own mess. And judging by his track record, he was going to need a bigger mop than they made. It was 3 years ago, late November, and Victor Grayson Sr. had just finished the most stressful client dinner of his career. We'd been at some overpriced steakhouse downtown, the kind where they don't list prices on the menu because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. trying to convince a hedge fund manager named Richard something or other not to pull his $200 million portfolio over some regulatory concerns that weren't even our fault. The dinner had been brutal. Richard had spent 2 hours grilling us about compliance protocols, risk mitigation strategies, and whether our systems could handle the upcoming changes to international finance regulations. Victor had been sweating through his Brooks Brothers shirt despite the restaurant's aggressive air conditioning, and I'd been fielding technical questions faster than a tennis player at Wimbledon. By the end of it, Richard had agreed to stay on. Barely. With conditions. So many conditions that the contract addendum looked like a CVS receipt. Afterward, Victor had loosened his tie and turned to me in the back of the town car he'd called to take us back to the office. "Daniel, I need to tell you something." I'd been exhausted, running on fumes, and the 3 espressos I'd downed to stay sharp during Richard's interrogation. "If you're about to fire me, sir, I'm going to need at least 1 more espresso before I can process that emotionally." Victor had laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that had an edge to it. The kind that suggested something serious was coming. "Not firing you, son. Opposite, actually. I'm protecting you." Protecting me from what? Angry hedge fund managers? Because I think we just survived that. "From my family," Victor had said, and the weight in his voice made me sit up straighter. The car had rolled through downtown Pittsburgh, past office buildings lit up with people working late, past bars filled with people trying to forget they'd worked late, past the whole ecosystem of corporate America doing its nightly dance of ambition and exhaustion. "Sir, I'm not sure I follow." Victor had pulled out his phone, opened his email, and showed me a document. "I'm putting a clause in your contract. Effective immediately. My lawyers are finalizing it tonight, and it'll be in your inbox by morning." I'd squinted at the screen, trying to read legal jargon while mildly drunk on exhaustion and the whiskey Richard had insisted we all drink to seal the deal. "What kind of clause?" "The kind that says if anyone, and I mean anyone, including my own son, tries to screw you over, you get something in return. Something big." "How big are we talking?" Victor had smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who'd seen the future and didn't like what he saw. The compliance suite. The whole thing. Every line of code, every protocol, every certification. If they fire you under certain conditions, it becomes yours. Not theirs. Yours. I just stared at him, my tired brain trying to process what he was saying. The compliance suite was the crown jewel of Grayson Global. It was the thing that kept billion-dollar deals alive. It was the reason clients like Richard and Cormont Capital stayed with us instead of jumping to competitors. It was, in many ways, the entire foundation upon which the company stood. "Sir, I don't understand." "Why would you?" "Because Logan's an idiot," Victor had said flatly, and hearing him say it out loud, hearing a father admit his own son was a liability, had been jarring. Don't get me wrong, Daniel. I love my boy. But love doesn't make you blind, and I'm not blind. Logan thinks business is about buzzwords and confidence and schmoozing at golf clubs. He doesn't understand that what we do, what you do, is the actual work. The unglamorous, technical, middle-of-the-night crisis management that keeps this whole house of cards from collapsing. The car had stopped at a red light. Through the window, I'd watched a homeless guy trying to squeegee windshields for spare change, and I'd thought about how precarious everything was. How one bad decision, one wrong move, could send anyone tumbling. "Logan's going to take over someday," Victor had continued. "Probably sooner than I'd like. My doctor's been making noises about my blood pressure and my cholesterol and all the other fun things that happen when you spend 40 years eating business dinners and sleeping 4 hours a night. And when Logan takes over, he's going to make changes. Stupid changes. Changes that make him feel important but actually just break things. And you think he'll fire me? I think he'll fire you the second he thinks it'll save him money or make him look decisive to the board. He won't understand what he's losing. He'll just see a salary expense and think, I can cut that and hire someone cheaper. Because that's how he thinks. In spreadsheets and quarterly earnings, not in relationships and institutional knowledge. I'd felt something cold settle in my stomach. So this clause ties your $400,000 annual bonus to ownership rights of the compliance suite. If that bonus vests, you get controlling interest. Not access. Not usage rights. Control. The whole enchilada, as you kids say. I'm 45, sir. I don't think anyone says the whole enchilada anymore. Well, I'm 68, and I'll say whatever the hell I want, Victor had shot back. but he was smiling. Point is, Daniel, I'm putting this in your contract as insurance. If they treat you right, if they let that bonus vest, everyone wins. You get your money, they get to keep using the suite, and the company keeps making money. But if they screw you, if Logan gets too clever for his own good and tries to save pennies by firing you right before that bonus hits, then the suite becomes yours. And without it, Grayson Global is just another mediocre consulting firm with overpriced coffee and motivational posters. The light had turned green, and the car had started moving again. My brain had been spinning faster than the wheels. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know it exists. I want you to know that I see you, Daniel. I see what you do for this company. I see the late nights and the missed dinners and the way you've basically held Logan's hand through every major decision he's made since he joined the firm. And I want you to know that if push comes to shove, you're protected. Your family, son. Real family. Not the kind that steals your fries. At the time, I thought Victor was being paranoid. Maybe a little dramatic. The man had always had a flair for the theatrical. You don't build $1 billion company without some showmanship. And I'd figured this was just his way of showing appreciation. A grand gesture. A safety net that would never actually be needed. Sir, I appreciate this. Really, I do. But I don't think. You don't think Logan will be that stupid? Victor had finished for me. I hope you're right. God, I hope you're right. But I've been watching him, Daniel. Watching the way he makes decisions. The way he values things. And I'm not confident. I'm really not confident. The car had pulled up to the office building. Through the windshield, I could see the Grayson Global logo illuminated against the night sky. All steel and glass and corporate ambition. The clause is ironclad, Victor had said. My lawyers made sure of it. There are conditions, of course. Termination has to happen within 48 hours of the bonus vesting date. Has to be without cause. Has to meet about 17 different legal criteria that basically spell out fired for no good reason right before you were supposed to get paid. But if all those conditions are met, the suite transfers to you automatically. No negotiation. No buyback option. Just yours. I'd shaken his hand. Thank you, sir. I hope we never have to use it. Me too, son. Me too. We'd both gotten out of the car, and Victor had clapped me on the shoulder. Get some sleep, Daniel. You look like death warmed over. Feel like it too. That's how you know you're doing it right, Victor had said. And then he'd walked into the building, leaving me standing on the sidewalk wondering if I'd just had the weirdest conversation of my career. The clause had shown up in my inbox the next morning, buried in a contract amendment with enough legal terminology to make a law student weep. I'd read through it. Well, skimmed through it while drinking terrible office coffee, and then filed it away in my mental folder of things Victor does when he's feeling sentimental. I'd honestly forgotten about it. Or if not forgotten, then pushed it so far back in my mind that it became white noise. Background radiation. The kind of thing you know exists but don't really think about, like the warranty on your TV or the terms and conditions you agreed to when downloading that app. Until today. Until Logan had walked into my office with that termination notice and that smug smile and fired me exactly 48 hours before my bonus was set to vest. Sitting in my car, staring at the cardboard box on my passenger seat, I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Scrolled back. Way back. 3 years of emails, past project updates and client crises and Logan's increasingly unhinged company-wide memos about disrupting the paradigm. There it was. November 2022. Subject line, contract amendment, confidential. I opened it and read through the clause again. Really read it this time, not just skimmed. Every word, every condition, every legal protection Victor had built into it like he was constructing a fortress specifically designed to survive Logan's incompetence. Termination without cause. Check. Logan hadn't given me a reason beyond business decision. Within 48 hours of bonus vesting. Check. My bonus was set to vest on Thursday at midnight. Today was Tuesday afternoon. Employee must have been with the company for minimum 15 years. Check. 20 years, baby. Termination must result in immediate loss of bonus eligibility. Check. Effective immediately meant no bonus. I kept reading, and with every condition I met, I could feel this smile spreading across my face. Not a nice smile. Not a, oh how pleasant smile. More like the smile a chess player gets when they realize their opponent just walked into checkmate and doesn't even know it yet. Victor Grayson Sr. had been Nostradamus in a tailored suit. He'd seen the future, and the future looked exactly like Logan being Logan. Cocky, short-sighted, and convinced that firing me 2 days early would save the company $400,000. What Logan had actually done was trigger every single condition in the clause. Every single one. In 46 hours and change, the compliance suite, the thing holding up $4 billion in contracts, the thing keeping Cormont Capital and every other major client from walking away, was going to belong to me. Not Grayson Global. Not Logan. Me. I wanted to call Victor and thank him, but Victor had died 8 months ago. Heart attack. Right there in his office, probably stressing about whatever mess Logan had made that week. The funeral had been huge, corporate, full of people who'd never actually known him but showed up, because that's what you do when a CEO dies. But sitting in my car, reading his clause, I felt like he was still here, still watching, still protecting me from his own family. Thanks, old man, I said to nobody. You called it. You absolutely called it. And somewhere, I like to think Victor was laughing. That knowing laugh he'd had in the back of that town car 3 years ago. The laugh that said, I told you so. Here's something they don't teach you in business school. Assuming you went to business school and didn't just coast through on daddy's money and a trust fund that could have solved world hunger. When someone fires you, your reaction matters more than the firing itself. Logan had expected drama. I could see it in his eyes when he dropped that termination notice on my desk like he was dealing cards in Vegas. He wanted tears, rage, maybe a good old-fashioned office meltdown complete with thrown staplers and threats of legal action. He wanted me to give him ammunition, to prove that firing me was the right call, because look how unstable Daniel Morgan is. Can't even handle a simple business decision without losing his mind. But I learned a long time ago, back when I was negotiating with clients who ate weak people for breakfast and picked their teeth with the bones, that calm is a weapon. A really, really effective weapon. Because when you stay calm, genuinely calm, not that fake calm where you're clearly seconds away from a stroke, it makes the other person wonder what you know that they don't. So when Logan stood there in his expensive suit with that smirk plastered on his face, waiting for me to explode, I just said, understood. One word. Flat. Emotionless. The vocal equivalent of a shrug. His smirk had faltered, just for a second, but I caught it. That little flicker of confusion that said, wait, why isn't he freaking out? It was beautiful, like watching someone realize they'd just stepped in dog poop, but they're not sure if anyone else noticed yet. That's it. Logan had asked, clearly disappointed. Just understood. What else would you like me to say? I'd kept my voice level, professional, the same tone I'd used in 1,000 client meetings when someone was being an absolute nightmare, but I still needed to close the deal. I don't know. Most people have questions, concerns. I'm sure HR will answer any questions I have about the logistics. I'd started gathering my things, moving slowly, deliberately. Not rushed, not angry. Just efficient. Like I was packing up after a normal day at the office instead of the end of a 20-year career. That calm had driven him nuts. I could tell. His jaw kept clenching and unclenching like he was chewing invisible gum. He'd wanted a fight, wanted justification for his decision, wanted me to give him something he could take back to the board and say, see, this guy was unstable. We made the right call. Instead, he got nothing. Just professional courtesy and a guy who looked mildly inconvenienced, like I'd been told the elevator was out of service and I'd have to take the stairs. Karen from HR had looked relieved when I didn't make a scene. Sam the intern had looked vaguely disappointed, like the show he'd been expecting had been canceled. And Logan had just stood there, probably wondering why this victory felt so hollow. Because here's the thing about shouting and drama in the corporate world. It makes you look guilty. It makes you look like you deserve what happened. It gives them the moral high ground to stand on while they're actively screwing you over. But calm makes them nervous. Calm makes them think maybe, just maybe, they miscalculated. And Logan had definitely miscalculated. After I'd left the building with my cardboard box of shame, after I'd sat in my car having my little moment of reflection, after I'd texted Maya about opening that expensive wine, I'd driven home with a plan forming in my head. A beautiful, elegant, absolutely devastating plan that required exactly one thing from me. Continued calm. No angry phone calls. No social media rants. No burning bridges or making threats or doing any of the stupid, emotional things that people do when they get fired and want everyone to know they were wronged. Just quiet, calculated moves. Chess, not checkers. When I got home, Maya was already there, the expensive wine open and breathing on the kitchen counter. She took one look at my face and said, "Oh boy, should I pour now or wait for you to change out of your business casual?" Pour now. Definitely pour now. She'd handed me a glass that was filled maybe a touch more than socially acceptable, and I'd told her everything. The firing, the timing, the clause, the beautiful, poetic justice of Logan being too stupid to read his own company's contracts. "So let me get this straight," Maya had said, swirling her wine like she was in a movie about sophisticated people having sophisticated conversations. "Logan fired you 2 days before you would have basically owned the thing keeping his company alive. That's the long and short of it, yeah. And he has no idea? None whatsoever." Maya had started laughing. That deep, genuine laugh that I'd fallen in love with 23 years ago when we were both broke grad students sharing an apartment that had radiators from the Eisenhower administration. "Oh my God, Daniel, this is beautiful, right? This is karma in its purest form. I know. What are you going to do?" And that's when I'd laid out my plan. Simple, elegant, calm. "Nothing," I'd said. "For the next 46 hours, I'm going to do absolutely nothing. I'm going to drink this wine, sleep in tomorrow, maybe finally clean out the garage like you've been asking me to for 6 months. And I'm going to let the clock run out. That's it. That's the big plan. That's the big plan. Because here's the thing, Maya, I don't need to do anything. The clause is automatic. When that timer hits 0, the compliance suite transfers to me. No action required on my part. It's like one of those lottery scratch-offs, except I already know I won and I'm just waiting for the official verification." But I wasn't completely inactive. Because while doing nothing was the strategy, doing nothing with style required a little bit of setup. I'd gone to my home office, the room that was supposed to be a guest bedroom, but had slowly transformed into mission control for my entire career, and powered up my system. The good one. Not the laptop Grayson Global had issued me, which I dutifully left on my desk for Karen to collect. No, this was my personal setup. The one with the encrypted drives and the backups of backups and the security protocols that would make a CIA operative nod with approval. There, in a folder I'd created 3 years ago when Victor first told me about the clause, was everything. Every line of code for the compliance suite. Every certification. Every license. Every piece of documentation. All backed up, all encrypted, all protected by biometric security that only my fingerprints and my retinal scan could unlock. Logan thought he had backups. I'd seen him in my rearview mirror as I left the parking lot, probably already on the phone with IT demanding they secure all of Morgan's files. And IT would comply, because that's what IT does. They'd give him access to my company laptop, my company cloud storage, my company everything. And they'd find the decoy USB drive I'd left in my desk drawer. The one labeled Compliance Backup, Confidential, in big, obvious letters. Logan would pounce on that thing like a golden retriever finding a tennis ball. He'd plug it in, probably call an emergency meeting, announce that the crisis was averted because they had the backups. Except that USB drive contained exactly nothing useful. It was full of files, sure, but they were like movie props. They looked real from a distance, but up close, they were just facades. Incomplete code. Outdated protocols. Documentation from versions so old they wouldn't even run on modern systems. It was the digital equivalent of an empty Pringles can. You pick it up, you shake it, you hear something rattling around inside, and you think, great, there's still chips left. And then you open it and find out it's just crumbs and disappointment. I'd set that trap weeks ago, the moment I'd sensed Logan circling. The moment I'd noticed him in budget meetings, squinting at my salary line like it personally offended him. I'd known this was coming. Maybe not the exact timing, but the general trajectory. And I'd prepared. "You're kind of scary when you're like this," Maya had said, watching me work. "Like what?" "Calm. Calculated. Like a Bond villain, but with better intentions and worse hair." "Hey, my hair's fine. Your hair looks like you've been running your hands through it for 6 hours straight, which you probably have." She'd kissed the top of my head anyway. But I stand by my statement. "You're terrifying right now." "Good," I'd said, setting up one final piece of the puzzle. "Because in about 45 hours, Logan's going to be absolutely terrified, and I want to make sure I'm ready for it." That final piece was an email. Scheduled, automated, Time to send at exactly 12:01 a.m. on Thursday. The moment the clause kicked in. The moment the compliance suite officially transferred to my name. The recipient? Elise Harrington, lead counsel at Cormont Capital. The woman who could smell legal problems from 3 states away and had no patience for corporate incompetence. The message was simple, professional, and absolutely devastating. Dear MS. Harrington, per Section 14 of the Grayson Global Service Agreement, please be advised that as of this timestamp, ownership and operational control of the compliance suite referenced in your contract has transferred to Daniel Morgan LLC. Grayson Global no longer holds licensing rights or operational authority. Attached, please find the updated license certificate, signed and notarized. For continuity of service, please contact me directly at your earliest convenience. Best regards, Daniel Morgan. Attached was the license certificate. Official, legal, irrefutable, with my name on it in big, beautiful letters. Maya had read over my shoulder. Daniel Morgan LLC? When did you start an LLC? About 3 hours ago. Online. Takes 20 minutes and costs less than dinner at that sushi place you like. You started a company in less time than it takes to watch a TV episode? Welcome to the 21st century, babe. You can do anything online except fix stupid, and stupid is what we're dealing with here. I'd clicked schedule send and sat back in my chair. 45 hours and counting. 45 hours until Elise Harrington got that email. 45 hours until Cormont's lawyers started asking very pointed questions about who actually owned what. 45 hours until Logan's world imploded like a building in a controlled demolition. You know what the best part is? I'd said to Maya, who was refilling our wine glasses. What's that? I don't have to do anything aggressive. I don't have to make threats or burn bridges or post angry rants on LinkedIn. I just have to wait and watch and maybe eat some popcorn while Logan figures out that he just traded his entire kingdom for absolutely nothing. Maya had clinked her glass against mine. To calm being a weapon. To calm being a weapon, I'd echoed. And to Logan being too dumb to realize he just brought a knife to a gunfight. Somewhere across town, Logan was probably celebrating his brilliant cost-cutting move. Probably telling his wife or his friends or whoever would listen about how he'd streamlined operations and made the tough decisions that needed to be made. And in 45 hours, he was going to learn a very expensive lesson about why you should always read the fine print. Especially when the fine print was written by a man who knew his own son better than his son knew himself. Wednesday morning, I woke up at 9:47 a.m. Not because of an alarm, not because of a crisis halfway around the world, not because some client in Tokyo needed emergency damage control before their stock market opened. I woke up because my body decided it was done sleeping, and for the first time in probably 15 years, that was perfectly fine. No emails marked urgent. No phone calls from panicked account managers. No Logan sending company-wide memos at 6 a.m. about seizing the day and disrupting our disruption. Just silence. Beautiful, peaceful, slightly unsettling silence. Maya had already left for work. She was a senior architect at a firm downtown that actually appreciated her, which was a novel concept I was only just beginning to understand, and had left a note on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. Enjoy unemployment, babe. Try not to burn the house down. Love you. I made coffee. Real coffee. The expensive stuff we kept for weekends, not the brown sludge that came out of the Grayson Global break room machine that probably violated the Geneva Convention. I made it slow, measuring the grounds, heating the water to the right temperature, doing all the pretentious coffee rituals that I'd never had time for when I was rushing out the door at 6:30 a.m. to beat traffic. Then I sat down at my home office computer and pulled up the timer. 47 hours, 52 minutes. A red digital countdown, ticking away with the precision of a Swiss watch and the inevitability of gravity. Every second that passed was a second closer to Logan's reckoning. Every minute was another nail in the coffin of his brilliant cost-saving strategy. I sipped my coffee and watched the numbers change. 47:51, 47:50, 47:49. This was the most relaxing doomsday countdown I'd ever experienced. It was like waiting for pizza delivery, except instead of pepperoni and cheese, I was waiting for the complete and total collapse of my former employer's entire business model. And honestly, the anticipation was better than any pizza I'd ever had. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe Dunn, the VP of Operations who'd always been too smart for Grayson Global, but too loyal to leave. Heard about yesterday. You okay? I typed back. Never better. How's the office? Weird. Logan's been in back-to-back meetings all morning. Keeps using the phrase strategic realignment. Nobody knows what it means. Nobody ever knows what it means. That's the point. Fair. Listen, if you need a reference or want to grab drinks and trash talk the company, I'm available. Drinks sound good. Maybe next week? I'm kind of busy right now. Busy doing what? You just got fired. Exactly. I'm busy being unemployed. It's very time-consuming. She sent back a laughing emoji and a "you're weird, but I appreciate it." And that was that. I set my phone down and went back to watching the timer. 46:43, 46:42, 46:41. To spice things up, I decided to double-check my scheduled email. The one that was going to land in Elise Harrington's inbox at 12:01 a.m. Friday. The exact moment my clause kicked in and the compliance suite became mine. I pulled it up, read through it again, made sure all the attachments were properly linked. The license certificate was a thing of beauty. Official letterhead. Legal language that would make a lawyer weep with joy. My name, Daniel Morgan, sole proprietor of Daniel Morgan LLC. Right there in black and white where Grayson Global's name used to be. I'd had it notarized yesterday afternoon at one of those UPS stores that does notary services along with shipping packages and selling overpriced office supplies. The notary, a bored-looking woman in her 50s who was clearly just counting down the hours until retirement, had barely glanced at the document. "Just need to see your ID," she'd said. I'd shown her my driver's license. She'd stamped the certificate, signed it, filled in her little notary information box, and charged me $15. $15 to officially document the transfer of a compliance suite that protected $4 billion in contracts. Best $15 I'd ever spent. Now that certificate was attached to an email, sitting in my outbox, waiting for the scheduled send time like a bomb with a very specific timer. Tick, 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 boom. I saved the email draft, even though it was already saved, but paranoia is a hell of a drug, and leaned back in my chair. What does someone do when they're waiting for their professional revenge to unfold? I'd never been in this situation before. All my previous career moves had been straightforward. Get hired, do good work, get promoted, repeat. Nobody ever teaches you what to do in the calm before the storm when the storm is entirely of someone else's making and you're just waiting for them to realize they're standing in a puddle holding a lightning rod. I considered my options. I could clean the garage like I'd promised Maya. I could finally start that novel I'd been threatening to write for the last decade. I could binge-watch something on Netflix and pretend to be a normal person who has hobbies and interests beyond work. Instead, I made more coffee and started poking around LinkedIn. Grayson Global's company page was its usual mix of corporate cheerleading and motivational nonsense. Proud to announce another quarter of excellence. Our team is driving innovation. Join us in disrupting the paradigm. All the standard LinkedIn garbage that real people scroll past while looking for actual jobs. Logan had posted yesterday afternoon, excited to announce strategic organizational changes at Grayson Global, streamlining operations for a leaner, more agile future. Hashtag leadership, hashtag innovation, hashtag growth mindset. The comments were a mix of supportive and suspicious. Supportive from people who probably didn't know what strategic organizational changes meant and were just being polite. Suspicious from people in the industry who could read between the lines and knew that streamlining operations was corporate speak for "we fired someone important and are pretending it was planned." One comment from a former colleague made me laugh. Streamlining equals firing Daniel Morgan? Bold move, Logan. Very bold. Logan hadn't responded to that one. I scrolled through more posts, more updates, more corporate propaganda. Then I checked Cormont Capital's page, just for fun. They'd posted about quarterly earnings, some new hires, a charity initiative. Nothing about Grayson Global. Nothing that suggested they knew what was about to hit them in. I checked my timer, 45 hours and 18 minutes. My phone rang. Unknown number. Pittsburgh area code. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Daniel? It's Alan Price. Alan Price, board member at Grayson Global. One of the few people there with actual business sense and a functioning moral compass. We'd worked together on several projects over the years, and he'd always been straight with me, which in corporate America is about as rare as an honest politician. Hey, Alan, how's it going? Honestly, not great. I heard about yesterday. Logan's decision. Yeah, that was something. It was stupid is what it was. Alan sounded tired. I tried to talk him out of it. Told him firing you right before your bonus vested was going to cause problems. He didn't listen. I took a sip of coffee, considering how much to say. Problems how? Well, for starters, half the board thinks it was reckless. And I've been getting calls from clients asking what the hell is going on. Apparently word travels fast that you're gone, and people are nervous. People should be nervous. There was a pause. Daniel, what does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like, Alan. Logan made a decision. Decisions have consequences. In about 45 hours, those consequences are going to become very apparent. You're being cryptic. I'm being accurate. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear Alan breathing, thinking, probably putting pieces together faster than Logan ever could. The clause. Victor's clause. I have no idea what you're talking about. Jesus Christ, Daniel. Logan triggered it, didn't he? Again, I have no idea what you're referring to. I'm just a recently unemployed guy drinking coffee in his pajamas at, I checked the clock, 10:43 a.m. on a Wednesday. Living the dream. Daniel. Alan, I like you. You've always been straight with me. So I'm going to give you some advice, friend to friend. Update your resume. Maybe reach out to some contacts at other firms. Because in about 45 hours, Grayson Global is going to be a very different place. And you probably don't want to be standing too close when the explosion happens. This is really happening. I neither confirm nor deny anything. But hypothetically, if someone were to fire the guy who built and maintained the compliance suite that protects all their major contracts, right before a bonus clause that transfers ownership of said suite was set to vest, that would be a very, very expensive mistake. Hypothetically, Alan swore, colorfully, using words I didn't know he knew. Logan's going to lose everything. Again, hypothetically? Yeah, he is. And you're just going to let it happen. Alan, I'm not letting anything happen. Logan made this happen. He fired me. He triggered the clause. He decided that saving $400,000 was more important than keeping the golden goose alive. I'm just existing, drinking coffee, watching the clock. Can this be fixed? Can we buy the suite back from you? Can we? Alan, we're not having this conversation. You're a board member at Grayson Global. I'm a private citizen. Any business discussions would need to go through proper channels, with proper legal representation at the proper time. Which is not now. When is the proper time? I looked at my timer. 44:37, 44:36, 44:35. I'd say about 44 hours and 35 minutes from now. Give or take. Alan swore again. I need to call an emergency board meeting. You do what you need to do, Alan. But here's the thing. Even if the board wanted to fix this, even if Logan suddenly grew a brain and realized what he'd done, it's too late. The clause is automatic. When that timer hits 0, the transfer happens. No takebacks. No do-overs. No oops, we made a mistake, can we undo it? Just done. Victor really thought of everything, didn't he? Victor was a smart man. Smarter than his son, that's for damn sure. I'm sorry, Daniel. For what it's worth, I voted against firing you. I know you did, Alan, and I appreciate it. But this isn't about you. This is about Logan thinking he could play hardball without understanding the rules of the game. We talked for a few more minutes. Alan tried to pump me for more information, tried to find some angle, some loophole, some way to mitigate what was coming. But there wasn't one. Victor had built that clause like Fort Knox, and I checked it 17 times with 3 different lawyers over the past 24 hours just to make sure. It was airtight, ironclad, bulletproof. All the cliches that meant Logan is screwed and there's nothing anyone can do about it. After I hung up, I went back to my timer. 43:52, 43:51, 43:50. The countdown continued. Inevitable as sunrise, unstoppable as time itself, and infinitely more satisfying than any revenge fantasy I could have dreamed up. Because this wasn't revenge. This was just consequences wearing a very professional suit and knocking politely on Logan's door. And in less than 44 hours, that door was going to get kicked clean off its hinges. Thursday morning started like a dream. I'd slept better than I had in years. Number 3 a.m. wake-up calls from panicked clients. No stress dreams about compliance audits. No alarm set for some ungodly hour because someone in a different time zone needed my immediate attention. Just solid, uninterrupted sleep that left me feeling like a functional human being instead of a walking coffee addiction. I made breakfast. Actual breakfast. Eggs, toast, bacon, the whole domestic scene that I'd seen in commercials but never actually had time to experience on a weekday. Maya had already left for work, but she'd stuck another note on the fridge, 23 hours to go. Try not to gloat too much when it happens, but also totally gloat. You've earned it. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when my phone rang. 8:47 a.m. Unknown number, but the area code was familiar. New York. Manhattan, if I had to guess. I answered on the third ring. Daniel Morgan. Mr. Morgan, this is Elise Harrington from Cormont Capital. And there it was. The first domino. Right on schedule. Elise Harrington was a legend in corporate legal circles. Can you confirm that the conditions outlined in this section have been met? I smiled into my coffee. I can confirm that all conditions have been met, yes. The transfer becomes official at midnight tonight. Midnight Eastern Time? Correct. Another pause. Longer this time. I could practically hear the gears turning in her lawyer brain, calculating implications, assessing risks, probably already drafting the email she'd need to send to her CEO. Mr. Morgan, I need to be very clear about what we're discussing. You're saying that as of midnight tonight, you, not Grayson Global, will own operational control and licensing rights to the compliance suite that currently manages $4 billion in Cormont Capital contracts. That's exactly what I'm saying, Ms. Harrington. I'd encourage you to read Section 14 in its entirety. It's all spelled out quite clearly. Victor Grayson Sr. was very thorough when he drafted that clause. Victor Grayson Sr. drafted this clause? He did. About 3 years ago. Had it added to my employment contract as a, let's call it an insurance policy. Against what? Against exactly what happened on Tuesday. Someone making a very stupid decision at a very stupid time. I could hear Elise exhale. It wasn't quite a sigh, but it was close. The sound of someone realizing that a situation was about to get exponentially more complicated. Does Grayson Global know about this transfer? I have no idea what Grayson Global knows or doesn't know, Miss Harrington. I was fired on Tuesday. I haven't spoken to anyone there in any official capacity since then. But they will know. Soon. I imagine they'll figure it out, yes. Probably around the same time you do. Speaking of which, you should have an email arriving in your inbox at approximately 12:01 a.m. It'll have all the relevant documentation, including the updated license certificate. You've already prepared the documentation. I'm thorough, Miss Harrington. I learned from the best. There was another pause, and I could tell she was making a decision. Lawyers are good at that. Weighing options in real time, calculating risks versus rewards, deciding whether to play things close to the vest or put their cards on the table. Mr. Morgan, I'm going to be direct with you. Cormont Capital has $4 billion in contracts that rely on the compliance suite you're about to own. We need to know that those contracts will remain secure and operational during this transition. The contracts will be fine, Ms. Harrington. Better than fine, actually. Because unlike Logan Grayson Jr., I actually understand how the compliance suite works. I built it. I maintained it. I've been the one keeping those contracts alive for the past 15 years while Logan was busy learning buzzwords from TED Talks. That's reassuring. It should be. But here's what I need you to understand. As of midnight tonight, Grayson Global will no longer have any legal right to operate, modify, or access the compliance suite. Any attempt to do so would be a breach of licensing agreements and potentially a violation of several federal regulations regarding data security and contract management. You're saying Grayson Global will be in default on their contracts. I'm saying Grayson Global will be in violation of the operational terms outlined in those contracts, yes. Unless, of course, they negotiate new licensing terms with the actual owner of the suite, which, as of midnight, will be me. Elise was quiet for a moment. Then, you've thought this through. I've had 3 years to think it through, Miss Harrington. Ever since Victor put that clause in my contract and told me exactly what would happen if his son ever got too clever for his own good. Which, as it turns out, he did. What happens now? Now? You read your contract. You call your CEO. You explain that Grayson Global just lost operational control of the asset that keeps your $4 billion in contracts legally compliant. And then you wait for my email at midnight, which will include my contact information and an invitation to discuss continued service under new management. New management being you. New management being Daniel Morgan LLC. Yes. Same service. Same quality. Same guy who's been doing the actual work all along. Just without the Grayson Global logo and the incompetent executive making terrible decisions. And if we want to continue our relationship with Grayson Global? I laughed. Couldn't help it. Ms. Harrington, with all due respect, you don't have a relationship with Grayson Global. You have a relationship with the Compliance Suite. And the Compliance Suite is about to belong to me. Logan's just the guy who used to sign the invoices. Used to, I confirmed. There was a long pause. I could hear more typing, more papers shuffling. Elise was probably already drafting memos, preparing briefings, getting ready to drop a bomb on her CEO's desk that was going to make everyone's Thursday very, very interesting. Mr. Morgan, I need to consult with my team. But I want you to know that Cormont Capital values stability and continuity. If you can provide that. I can provide that, Ms. Harrington. That's literally what I've been doing for 2 decades. The only difference is that now I'll be doing it without Logan breathing down my neck asking if we can blockchain the synergy or whatever nonsense he learned from his latest podcast. I heard what might have been a suppressed laugh. I see. Well, I'll be watching for that email at midnight. It'll be there. Prompt. Professional. With all the documentation you'll need to verify the transfer. And Grayson Global? What about them? When will they find out? I looked at my watch. I'd say sometime in the next few hours. Probably right around the time your CEO calls their CEO asking what the hell is going on. Or maybe when one of their own lawyers actually reads Section 14 and realizes what Logan did. Either way, it should be entertaining. You sound almost cheerful about this. Ms. Harrington, I gave that company 20 years of my life. 20 years of late nights and missed anniversaries and fixing problems that other people created. And they thanked me by tossing me out like yesterday's garbage 2 days before my bonus vested. So yeah, I'm a little cheerful about watching the consequences unfold. Fair enough. She paused. For what it's worth, Mr. Morgan, I've worked with you on several compliance issues over the years. You're good at what you do. Very good. And speaking personally, not as Cormont's counsel, I think Logan Grayson Jr. just made the dumbest decision of his professional life. Speaking personally, not as the guy who's about to own his entire business model, I think you're absolutely right. We wrapped up the call with professional pleasantries and promises to speak again after midnight. When I hung up, I looked at my timer. 14 hours, 52 minutes. The first domino had fallen. Elise Harrington knew, which meant that within the hour, Thomas Everett, Cormont Capital's CEO, would know. And within 2 hours, every lawyer at Cormont would be combing through their contracts looking for exposure, calculating risk, and probably drafting very pointed questions to send to Grayson Global. And Logan? Logan was probably sitting in his office right now, completely oblivious, thinking he'd made a brilliant cost-saving decision and wondering why he kept getting voicemails from Cormont's legal department. I picked up my phone and texted Maya. First domino just fell. Cormont's lawyers are on it. This is going to be a fun day. She texted back immediately. I'm working from home this afternoon. I need to see this in real time. Don't start without me. Wouldn't dream of it. I poured another cup of coffee and settled in at my desk. The countdown continued. The dominoes were starting to fall. And somewhere across town, Logan Grayson Jr. was about to have a very, very bad day. The only question was, how long would it take him to figure out why? My money was on longer than it should, because Logan had never been quick on the uptake. But that was fine. The slower he figured it out, the more entertaining it would be to watch. I pulled up my email and refreshed it. Nothing yet, but it was coming. Oh, it was definitely coming. The calm before the storm was almost over, and I had the best seat in the house. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Logan. Of course it was Logan. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Daniel Morgan. What the hell did you say to them? Logan screamed, his voice hitting frequencies that only dogs and dolphins could normally hear. I held the phone away from my ear and put it on speaker. Maya, who'd come home early as promised, raised her eyebrows and mouthed. Is that him? I nodded and sipped my coffee, letting Logan continue his tirade. Cormont's lawyers are asking about Section 14. They want to know about ownership transfers. They're talking about contract violations. What did you tell them? I told them to read their contract, I said calmly. You what? I told them to read their contract. I enunciated each word slowly, like I was explaining something to a small child. Section 14 specifically. It's all in there, Logan. Black and white. There was a pause filled only with heavy breathing. I could picture Logan in his office, face red, probably loosening his tie because stress made him sweat. This is insane. You can't just, we have backups. We have all your files. Do you? I asked innocently. That's interesting. By Friday morning, the internet had caught fire. Grayson Global's stock tanked 15% in the first hour of trading. Financial analysts were having a field day, downgrading the company from buy to what essentially translated to you're screwed in Wall Street speak. CNBC was running the headline, Grayson Global in freefall after compliance suite loss. Reuters went with, did they really fire the guy holding the golden goose? My personal favorite was from Bloomberg, when cost-cutting goes catastrophically wrong, a case study. Reporters were camped outside Grayson Global headquarters, shouting questions at anyone who walked past. Is it true you lost the compliance suite? Can you comment on the ownership transfer? Where's Logan Grayson Jr.? My phone had been ringing nonstop since midnight. Recruiters, competitors, former colleagues. Everyone wanted a piece of the action. Then, at 2:13 p.m., my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. Thomas Everett, Cormont Capital's CEO. Mr. Morgan. His voice was smooth, calculated. We need to talk about continuing our business relationship. Without Grayson Global. I smiled. I'm listening. At 11:59 p.m. Thursday night, Maya and I sat in my home office watching the countdown. She had champagne. I had coffee. We were both glued to the screen like it was New Year's Eve. 10, 9, 8, 7. This is better than any movie, Maya whispered. 3, 2, 1. Transfer complete. My laptop screen glowed with those two beautiful words. My name now sat on every licensing certificate, every protocol, every line of code. Mine. Forever. Legal. Irrevocable. The next morning's headlines were poetry. Cormont Capital signs exclusive agreement with Daniel Morgan, LLC. Logan's empire? Ashes. The company he'd inherited was hemorrhaging clients, bleeding money, encircling the drain faster than water in a flush toilet. My future? Coffee, contracts, and freedom. I texted Chloe, drinks next week? My treat. She responded immediately. You magnificent bastard. Yes. Maya raised her champagne glass. To Logan Grayson Jr., who proved that karma doesn't need fireworks. Sometimes it just needs quiet paperwork and a smirk. I clinked my coffee mug against her glass. Revenge doesn't always come with explosions. Sometimes it comes with a timer, a clause, and watching your enemy drown in his own stupidity. Best part? I didn't even have to get my hands dirty.